With that being said, though, LSU opens up training camp next week, and the most fierce competition on the field going into it feels like it is at quarterback. I think that is probably the competition that obviously everybody is going to look at just by the nature of the position. But when you openly talk about it, I think the offensive line's probably got some competitive spots that are going to be, just as fierce, but you may not be paying as close of attention to because of just the notoriety of the spot. And the quarterback competition at LSU is, as the offensive coordinator painted it while he was on this set a couple of weeks back, as good a competition as you can find in the country. And I don't think that those were just company lines. I believe that even within their own rooms that they feel so comfortable and confident of the quarterbacks that they have going into fall camp with. So Brian Kelly has passed the early quarterback test of keeping them all three on campus, all together in the same locker room going into camp. Is he going to be able to say that going into the Florida State game week is the true debate, right? Is if he can keep these guys all bought in, all competitive, hungry, all pulling for whoever gets the starting job and nobody transfers, is going to be the big question that Kelly, Denbrock, the offensive staff are going to have to navigate as almost a sub-storyline to finding the starter. And I think that's what Kelly has done up to this point. We've talked a lot about that since Kelly has landed on the job. When he's talked about the quarterback, or even if you look at his actions of getting that position in order. One of the first orders of business that Brian Kelly had when he was named LSU head football coach was going to secure that quarterback room, and he made a call to Miles Brennan and fished him out of, no pun intended, the transfer portal. It looked like Miles Brennan was going to end up at Southern Miss. Last 2 years of eligibility in college football, go back closer to home, go back to a region of the country that you're very familiar with, to a school that would love to have Brennan in their quarterback room calling snaps and signals.
They don't even have a quarterback.
For the Golden Eagles, no. And even if they did.
Frank Gore Jr. is that quarterback.
Are you kidding?
Really? I'm serious. I know the other running back because he's from Patterson. And, he starts, and Frank Gore Jr. is there.
So they just run the Wildcat?
They run the Wildcat.
Oh,
and read option.
Gracious.
Yep.
So, if Miles really just wanted to play, he could have just gone and played, gotten on the field, enjoyed his experience, gotten back home to a place that he's familiar with, people that he knows. But Brian Kelly calls him, gets him back to LSU, sells him on the chance to have the starting quarterback job in year one under Kelly. After that, he goes and gets Jaden Daniels. All of the stuff works out with Nussmeier. He's still here. You bring in Walker Howard, who is top 3 quarterback in last year's recruiting cycle. The room is loaded, right? You go through spring, you see all these guys work out, you see them get their reps. They know in-house who their guy is. I believe that as you and I talk today. I still believe that the competition is open, but you've been able to slot the competition. Right? They're not going into this thing blind. They're not going into this thing without having seen some of the prospects up close. How many of the coaches came through here and told you how important on-the-field evaluation was in recruiting? How important the camp circuit was for guys, so that you, the coach, can look at him and say, do this, like this, right now, and I can see it. And they can make their judgment up. And just as they sell you in camp, it's the same on the practice field. You know instantly who can and can't play, right when you look at them. And even of all of the ones that can play, you can still see the difference almost immediately. And then after evaluating 15 practices, Brian Kelly, Mike Denbrock, Joe Sloan all know what the pecking order of the quarterback reps and levels are to the competition, at least going in. Quarterback competition still open. May the best man win. But they know in-house kind of, after seeing 15 practices, they feel comfortable about calling these types of plays for this guy. They feel comfortable about putting this type of situations around this quarterback. But all in all, they feel more comfortable with this guy running the bulk of the play calls. They know who they feel most comfortable with. I'm not saying that inside they know they've got their number one guy, they've got their starter named, and they're going into camp like that. I'm just, come on. I mean, we've all been, how much more comfortable or confident are you around things that you've seen, understand, or at least gotten a chance to familiarize yourself with? These guys are football coaches by trade. Brian Kelly's been doing this for nearly 40 years. Mike Denbrock's been doing this for nearly 30 years. These guys have been looking at this. Joe Sloan played at a high level, has been coaching at a high level for 15 years. I think after 15 practices, a couple of scrimmages, that they don't have a clear understanding of who their guy is? They know who he is. They know going in, this is who they feel more comfortable with in situations. So it's going to be fascinating the way they manage this position early on in camp, and then how they ultimately name the starter, and then what the residual effect will be on the rest of the room once the starter was announced. How do you play that if you're Kelly, Sloan, Denbrock, and crew? Do you wait until Thursday of the Florida State game week to name your starter, to secure your roster, to make sure that you keep everybody intact for as long as possible? Or do you do one of your players a solid and say, look, I'm going this direction. I know how important it is for you to be able to play now. So I'm telling you out of respect, I'm going here. If that means that you want to look and try and find a place to play, we understand. Now, that doesn't make a lot of sense for Brian Kelly's best interest. But in coaching, you got to look out for your players' best interest, really, for more than anything, for that reputation to be sold out on the streets in recruiting. Look, Kelly could have he could have put me in a bad spot, but he worked with me, allowed me to get out there and have a chance to play. But Brian Kelly could also be looking at his quarterback room in week 6, 7, or 8 in the SEC and say, I wish I had a second or third guy I could count on. Rather having to play Walker Howard, God forbid, at that point in the schedule. So the way that this quarterback room has been managed, has, competitively kind of played out, I think in itself has kind of been really intriguing of the way that Kelly's handled it. For how political he was during spring, there were times when he was high on Miles. There were times that he was high on Garrett. He would say really positive things about Jaden. He was nice and had some bouquets to say about Walker Howard. But ultimately, at the end of spring, when he was pressed after the spring game, he's standing in the guts of Tiger Stadium, and I believe Jacques asks him, what you learned about the quarterback today, Coach? And Brian Kelly, in true head coaching fashion, said, I'm a bit more confused than I got clarity. Something to that effect. I'm paraphrasing, but he said, I'm more confused now than I've ever been. Come on, Coach. And I'm not criticizing you, but who really believes that? He knows what he's got at quarterback. He's playing the game of, hey, I want all of them to believe that they're all on an even playing field going into the offseason, so none of them transfer. So I'm not looking at Walker Howard as my third-team quarterback, and, we lose a guy early in the season, and Walker Howard's the second-string quarterback, and you're playing, Alabama, Arkansas, and Texas A&M with him being a snap away. You're really in a great spot today. Tomorrow you could be screwed. And it goes into how you manage the personalities in the position, probably just as much as you're evaluating what's going on the field. So it's going to be wild to see how this competition plays out. It was good to see Jaden Daniels having the wide receivers out to California last week and working those guys out. You can see everybody making their play for the leadership role and trying to, familiarize and make themselves the most comfortable around the guys that are going to be catching the balls. So, you know, I mean, at least you can see internally that the guys in the competition, it seemed like each one of them kind of feel they got a shot. I mean, I've seen clips of Butte, of Besh, Kayshawn, Malik Neighbors, Jeray Jenkins working out with Garrett Nussmeier. Now you see the latest social media of all those guys hanging out in California with Jaden Daniels. All these guys are putting in the work. Now it's time to get on the field and really figure this thing out from the coach's standpoint, from the player's standpoint. Coaches have had the luxury of going through spring saying that this thing's an even race, keeping everybody intact in the off season, in the summer. Now you show up for camp, and this thing's got to be figured out. And at some point, you've got to name a starter, and that's not going to have the ripple effect. What is the ripple effect going to be? From when, who is the choice? Jordan Haydad, Brennan is going to transfer to Southern Miss. Jeff and Kenner, book it. Brennan will be the starter, guaranteed.
There you go.
Hayden Paris, Jordy, give yourself some credit. You've been doing this for over 40 years. I wish, Hayden.
We'll get there.
Hayden Paris, Nussmeier. I'm just reading some of these statements here. But it's going to be great competition, man. It's going to be fascinating competition on and the full the full degree of the competition is going to be great for how you handle it off the field, the effects it has from the decision when it's made, who it is, to the room. All of that stuff will be it'll be interesting to see how Brian Kelly handles that in year one. I think that's something that you will look on, evaluate, and not necessarily judge him by, but it'll give you a good judge of his style. And I think even up to this point we've seen, and I have been very impressed with the way that he has handled that. We've seen a lot of people in that position get to the microphone with emotion. And emotion in a press conference setting can get you into trouble real quick. Because you can say some things that you can't necessarily take back, and you can almost be overly honest, too honest. Ed Ogeron was too honest at times. He would give you too much access into some of the discussions that were happening behind closed doors and gave you the true mindset and feelings on how coaches and he felt on certain players, things, strategies, whatever it may be. He almost gave you too much information. Les Miles would sit up there and dance and say stupid stuff and have you just kind of wondering, like, is he okay? But Kelly has really been very unemotional, very direct, yet very confusing. In the sense of, look, he understands the weight, the urgency on naming that position and making sure that it's staying up to from a competitive standpoint. But he also understands that you can't lose one of them because of the competition early on. Who was it? Was it Dave Aranda at Baylor that named his starting quarterback the first day of spring practice?
And then the other guy had the transfer.
And the
portal.
second day, the other guy transferred. That's one way to play it. Aranda looked at his guy and said, "You're my guy. I believe in you. You're going to have this starting job from day one of spring." I bet that kid's confidence went through the absolute roof. Ready to play. Ready to produce. The effect it had on the other kid, he was in the transfer portal a day later. If I had to bet today, I'd imagine that's how LSU scenario is going to play out. That he's going to name a starter on Tuesday, and on Wednesday, one of them is going to be in the portal. And from LSU's standpoint, you want to delay that as long as possible.
Do you think he's delaying that, or he honestly doesn't know?
I think he's delaying it. I think he's too talented and too good of a football coach not to know. You know what I mean? If you sat down and you watched somebody do 15 podcasts, or you saw 3 people do 15 podcasts that were right around the same skill level, and you've been doing this now for 10 years, and you go watch 3 people do it, after 15 times, you are going to have a degree of order in which you would say, I would take this person because they're better at this. This person was better at that. This person was probably, from a hybrid standpoint, better at all of the things collectively together, but they still have some deficiencies here. But if we want to put a podcast out that's going to get people attracted and good, produce numbers and be a sellable product, I would probably go with this person. After 15 sessions, you would have a good understanding of that.
Yeah.
Whatever you do in your field, if you're listening out there, you're an accountant, you're an agent, you're a lawyer, you're a doctor, you're whatever your trade is, just think about it. If you saw somebody coming up that was trying to get into your field and you had a extended time to watch them work, after 15 sessions, you would say, I feel more comfortable with this person. This person leaves me a little anxious when they get put in these situations. It's the same thing from a football coaching standpoint. They looked at things where they were like, damn, Miles has got an arm. Wow, Jaden Daniels he can throw the hell out of it. Or he can run it. Garrett Nussmeier does both things pretty good. Walker Howard's going to be a superstar. We got a hell of a room. You know, the coaches are looking around like, boys, we got a LSU's quarterback room is really good. It's deep. It's healthy. It's competitive. It's skilled. It's talent. I mean, man, yeah, but you better navigate it the right way because you might look up tomorrow and you might only have 2. And that's just the scary scenario of college football. You know, I mean, that's just the way that it's it's built now. And with the rules that we detailed yesterday where, you know, I mean, there's now discussion of, it seems like it's imminent of taking away the possibility or taking away the one time out of the transfer rule, taking that language out of the transfer rule. It's not just one time. It's however many times you're eligible. I mean, think about it. Miles Brennan's going into his 6th year. He's going into his 6th year, and he's only a junior. So, essentially he could play college football next season if the rules were intact the entire time he's been eligible to play college football. Legally, he could play at 7 different places.
Well, and with the new transfer portal rule where it's not going to be one time anymore.
That's what I'm saying.
You can island hop.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And even like now, he could play at 2 spots if he wanted to. He could enter fall camp with LSU, play for another team this season, and then transfer out of that school and play for another team the following year. I mean, that's the sport now. That's what college football is. So it's very easy for somebody to get a choice and a decision made on a Tuesday where they're not the starter, and by Wednesday they're on another campus. They're in somebody else's facility. They got somebody else's gear on. They're game planning for some other squad. And, you know, I mean, LSU and Brian Kelly obviously are very aware of that and very careful in how they've navigated just the press conferences of talking about the room. So put them on the field, figure it out, see who can play. Let the cream rise to the top, make the decision, and live with whatever happens after that. The responsibility of LSU in the imminent is to win games now. Who gives LSU the best chance to win now? Make that choice and don't look back. I mean, that's what, man, I'm not giving Brian Kelly any advice, but that would be my approach to it of, look, you're probably going to see some waves crash due to the decision you make at that position. Somebody somewhere is going to have a ripple effect and it's going to make them make a choice. You can't worry about that. Just make the decision of who gives you the best chance to win and live with that, whatever falls out from it.